A distress signal echoed through the underground containment complex. Then came the scream. Not from a human. From the monster. The reinforced blast doors exploded outward as alarms flooded every corridor with flashing crimson light. Scientists scattered in panic. Armed security teams rushed toward the containment wing, expecting another bloody massacre. Instead, they found something impossible. The creature wasn't attacking anyone. It was running. And every second, it seemed to know exactly where it wanted to go. The Xenobiology Research Station, orbiting Kepler 442b, had survived every dangerous lifeform discovered in the outer colonies. Poisonous predators. Psychic parasites. Living crystal beasts. Nothing had ever broken containment. Until Subject 07. Nobody even knew its real species. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, covered in dark silver scales that reflected the emergency lights. Massive claws could slice reinforced steel, while rows of glowing blue eyes constantly scanned every direction. The creature had destroyed 6 automated drones during capture. 3 soldiers had died trying to restrain it. Since then, every report described it with the same sentence. Extremely hostile. Do not approach. For 18 days, the monster had refused food. Refused sleep. Refused every attempt at communication. Whenever anyone entered its chamber, it attacked the walls until its own body bled. Many believed it was simply waiting for another chance to escape. That chance arrived during routine maintenance. A brief power fluctuation lasted only 4 seconds. 4 seconds were enough. Containment locks disengaged. The monster slammed into the armored door with terrifying force. Steel twisted. Hydraulic seals burst apart. The door flew across the corridor. The station instantly entered maximum security lockdown. Captain RYN barked orders across the radio. Seal every sector. Lethal force authorized. 20 heavily armed guards surrounded the hallway. Their weapons charged. Their targeting systems locked. The creature stopped. Everyone expected it to attack. Instead, it looked past them, almost as if they didn't exist. Then it suddenly sprinted. Not toward the guards. Not toward the station exit. It charged deeper into the medical wing. "What is it doing?" one officer whispered. Nobody answered. The guards opened fire. Blue stun bolts struck the monster's shoulders and back. It stumbled. Dark blood splashed across the white floor, but it never fought back. It kept running. The station's surveillance cameras tracked every movement. The creature ignored laboratories, ignored docking bays, ignored escape shuttles. It chose the fastest route to one specific location. Medical Bay 7. Inside that quiet room, Dr. Ethan Carter was finishing treatment on an injured engineer. Unlike most of the station, Ethan wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a xenobiologist. He was simply a human trauma medic, known for staying calm when everyone else panicked. He had treated humans, aliens, even military attack animals. His patients often joked that if Ethan couldn't save you, nobody could. The room lights suddenly turned red. Emergency alarms screamed. The engineer looked toward the hallway. What happened? Before Ethan could answer, boom! The medical bay doors burst inward. Everyone froze. The giant monster stood in the doorway, bleeding heavily, breathing in painful, uneven gasps. Security teams arrived only seconds later, aiming dozens of rifles past Ethan's shoulders. "Doctor!" Captain RYN shouted. "Move away from the creature." Nobody breathed. The monster slowly lowered its massive head. Its glowing eyes locked onto Ethan. Not with hatred. Not with hunger. With something nobody expected. Hope. The enormous creature took one slow step forward and collapsed directly in front of the human medic. The entire medical bay fell silent. Only the emergency alarms continued screaming through the station. The monster lay motionless on the floor, its massive chest rising and falling in short, painful breaths. Dark blue blood spread beneath its body, staining the spotless white tiles. Every rifle remained aimed at its head. Captain RYN stepped into the doorway, his finger resting on the trigger. Dr. Carter, he ordered. Step away. We end this now. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he looked at the creature more carefully. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The wounds across its body weren't fresh battle injuries from the escape. They were older, deeper, and infected. Several scales had been torn away completely. A long metal shard was buried between two armored plates near its shoulder. No wonder it had refused food. No wonder it had attacked the walls. It wasn't driven by rage. It had been in constant pain. The monster slowly lifted one shaking claw. Security guards tightened their grip. Incoming movement. But instead of attacking, the creature gently pushed something across the floor. A small tracking collar. The same containment device the station had attached after capturing it. It had ripped the collar off its own neck. Then it had slid it toward Ethan. Almost like an offering. The medic slowly knelt. Doctor! Captain Ryn shouted. Don't touch it. Ethan ignored him. Years in emergency medicine had taught him one simple lesson. Fear and pain often looked the same. The monster wasn't growling anymore. Its breathing sounded desperate. Weak. Its glowing eyes never left Ethan's face. Then Ethan noticed something else. The creature wasn't watching the soldiers. It was watching his hands. Waiting. As if it understood exactly what a medic was. Ethan spoke softly. I'm going to help you. The words meant nothing in the creature's language. Yet something in his voice seemed to matter. The monster closed several of its glowing eyes and stayed completely still. Captain Ryn couldn't believe what he was seeing. It understands. No, Ethan replied quietly. It trusts. The room became even quieter. A xenobiologist standing behind the soldiers shook her head. Impossible. Subject 07 attacked everyone. Ethan answered without looking up. Did anyone ever approach without weapons? Nobody spoke. That silence was answer enough. Ethan carefully reached toward the metal shard. The monster flinched but didn't strike. I'm removing this, Ethan warned. With one quick pull, the shard came free. A stream of dark blood followed. The creature roared. Half the security team nearly fired. But the roar wasn't anger. It was pain. Within seconds, Ethan pressed sterile compression pads against the wound. Medical gel. A nurse hesitated. Captain Ryn barked, Don't. Ethan looked directly at the frightened nurse. Please. After several tense seconds, she tossed him the medical kit. Ethan immediately sprayed regenerative gel over the torn tissue. The bleeding slowed. The monster's breathing became steadier. For the first time since its capture, it relaxed. Its enormous head rested against the floor only inches from Ethan. The creature made a deep, low sound. Not a growl. Almost. A relieved sigh. Then every monitor inside the room suddenly flashed with new warnings. Unknown biological reaction detected. Foreign toxin spreading. Ethan stared at the medical scanner. His expression changed instantly. This isn't just an injury. Captain Ryn frowned. What is it? Ethan looked back at the creature's blood. It was poisoned. The room erupted with confused voices. Poisoned? By who? Inside our own station. Before anyone could answer, the monster forced one eye open. With the last of its strength, it lifted a shaking claw and pointed, not at the soldiers, but toward the deepest research laboratories, as if trying to warn them. Then it lost consciousness. The station suddenly realized a terrifying possibility. The monster hadn't escaped to hunt anyone. It had escaped because something far more dangerous was already inside the station. No one spoke for several long seconds. The only sounds inside Medical Bay 7 were the steady beeping of monitors and the heavy breathing of the unconscious creature. Captain Ryn slowly lowered his rifle. Doctor, he said, tell me exactly what you found. Ethan studied the blood sample under the scanner. Strange black strands spread through the creature's bloodstream like living roots. This isn't a natural poison, Ethan said. It's biological. Something alive is growing inside its body. The station's chief xenobiologist, Professor Celis, stepped closer. Her eyes widened as she looked at the display. I've never seen cells behave like this. The black strands weren't killing the monster directly. They were spreading toward its nervous system. If they reach the brain, Ethan whispered, it won't matter how strong this creature is. Captain Ryn frowned. Can we remove it? I don't know. Before anyone could continue, every light in the medical bay flickered. Then another alarm replaced the containment warning. Research Laboratory 4. Emergency biohazard breach. Everyone turned toward the nearest monitor. Security cameras showed a laboratory in complete chaos. Broken glass covered the floor. Scientists were running in every direction. Something invisible slammed one researcher into a wall. Another disappeared beneath a cloud of black mist. The video cut to static. Captain Ryn grabbed his communicator. Report. Only screaming answered. Then silence. Professor Celis turned pale. Laboratory 4. Ethan looked at her. What was kept there? She hesitated. Then quietly answered. The organism we recovered from the monster's wounds. The room froze. You removed it? Ethan asked. We believed it was a parasite. Were you sure? No. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. They hadn't poisoned the monster. They had separated it from the very thing it had been trying to contain. Captain Ryn stared at the professor. You never told command. We needed proof. You needed permission. Before the argument could continue, another security feed activated automatically. This time the cameras caught it. The black organism. It wasn't mist. It wasn't liquid. It constantly shifted between both forms, flowing across walls and ceilings before forming dozens of long, razor-sharp tendrils. Gunfire filled the hallway. Pulse rifles hit the creature again and again. The blasts passed straight through it. Within seconds the squad disappeared beneath the moving darkness. Their radios went silent one by one. Ethan felt cold. The monster hadn't escaped from captivity. It had escaped from its hunter. Suddenly, the unconscious creature began moving again. Its breathing became faster. The monitors flashed wildly. It's waking up, a nurse shouted. The monster opened its glowing eyes. Instead of panic, it looked directly at Ethan. Then toward the security monitor. It saw the black organism. A deep rumble echoed from its chest. Not fear. Recognition. It struggled to stand despite its injuries. Ethan placed a hand on one massive foreleg. No. You're too weak. The creature looked at him. For the first time, Ethan saw intelligence behind those glowing eyes. The monster slowly touched the floor with one claw. Then it drew a simple shape using its own blood. A large circle. Inside it, a much smaller black circle. Then it slashed one claw across the drawing, cutting through the smaller mark. Professor Celis gasped. It's showing us. Ethan nodded. It hunted that thing. Captain Ryn looked from the drawing to the security screen. So all this time, we imprisoned the predator, Ethan finished quietly, and released the prey. Just then, the station shook violently. Emergency power failed across 3 sectors. Darkness swept through the corridors. One final message echoed over every speaker. Warning. Unknown life form detected in central reactor. Structural collapse estimated in 23 minutes. The monster forced itself to its feet. Still bleeding. Still poisoned. Yet determined to fight. It looked once more at Ethan, as if asking a silent question. Would the human trust it? The way it had trusted him? The station groaned as another violent explosion echoed through its metal frame. Lights blinked on and off. Smoke drifted through the ventilation system. Every screen displayed the same countdown. Structural collapse. 22 minutes. Captain Ryn looked from the monster to the reactor map. If that thing reaches the reactor core, this entire station is gone. The black organism was moving faster than expected. Security cameras showed it flowing through air ducts, walls, and maintenance tunnels. It wasn't simply hunting. It was searching. Ethan tightened the bandages around the monster's shoulder. You can't fight like this. The creature lowered its head and gently nudged Ethan's hand. It wasn't asking for more treatment. It was asking him to come. Professor Sellies examined the blood sample one last time. The poison is slowing it down. Without an antidote, it won't survive much longer. Can you make one? Not here. I need tissue from the parasite. Captain Ryn let out a frustrated breath. So the only way to save the monster is to face the thing trying to kill us. No one argued. There was no other choice. The captain gave new orders. Evacuate all civilians to the escape pods. Every remaining security unit falls back to defend the reactor. Then he looked at Ethan. And you? Ethan picked up his medical bag. I'm staying with my patient. Several soldiers exchanged confused looks. Doctor, one of them said, that thing nearly killed our capture team. Ethan nodded. And yet, when it finally had the chance to kill someone today, it came to a medic instead. No one had an answer for that. Minutes later, the strange group moved through the damaged corridors. Captain Ryn led the security team. Ethan walked beside the wounded monster. The giant creature never moved more than a few steps away from him. Whenever debris blocked the hallway, it quietly pushed the wreckage aside, careful not to strike the humans. The soldiers noticed. It could have crushed them dozens of times. It never even tried. Suddenly, a terrified scream echoed ahead. A maintenance worker was trapped beneath fallen steel while the black organism slowly spread across the ceiling above him. The soldiers raised their rifles. Captain Ryn shouted, "Fire!" Blue energy bolts tore into the darkness. The creature simply flowed around them. It kept advancing. The maintenance worker closed his eyes. He knew he couldn't escape. Then the monster roared. The sound shook the corridor. Without hesitation, it charged forward. Its claws slammed into the black organism, forcing it away from the trapped human. For the first time, the parasite reacted. It shrieked. Not in anger. In pain. It can hurt it. Captain Ryn yelled. The monster slashed again. Pieces of black flesh scattered across the floor before dissolving into smoke. The parasite lashed back with needle-like tendrils. Several pierced the monster's chest. Dark blood sprayed across the walls. Ethan rushed forward. No! The creature ignored its own injuries. Instead, it grabbed the twisted steel beam pinning the maintenance worker. With one powerful pull, it threw the beam aside. The worker crawled free. The monster immediately stepped between the human and the parasite, shielding him with its own body. Captain Ryn stared in disbelief. It protected him. Ethan quickly injected emergency medicine into the monster's wounded shoulder. You're losing too much blood. The creature looked at Ethan, breathing heavily, but remained standing. Then the parasite suddenly withdrew into a ventilation shaft. It wasn't retreating. It was heading toward the reactor. Professor Sellies checked the station map. It'll reach the core in less than 10 minutes. Captain Ryn reloaded his rifle. Then we end this there. The monster turned toward the reactor corridor and began walking again. This time, the humans didn't follow it because they had no other option. They followed because they finally believed it was on their side. The reactor chamber was unlike any other room on the station. A towering column of blue energy stretched from floor to ceiling, filling the massive chamber with a constant hum. Emergency lights flashed across damaged catwalks while sparks rained from broken control panels. The countdown continued. Structural collapse. 9 minutes. Captain Ryn's squad spread out around the reactor. Ethan, stay behind us. But Ethan didn't. He stayed beside the monster. The creature's breathing had become painfully slow. Fresh blood dripped from dozens of wounds, yet it refused to stop walking. Its glowing eyes remained fixed on the center of the chamber. Then the shadows moved. The black organism flowed out from every wall at once. It was much larger now. The pieces it had absorbed across the station had joined together into a single towering mass. Hundreds of tendrils twisted through the air like living whips, and dozens of glowing red eyes opened across its shifting body. Professor Sellies whispered, "It's been feeding." The creature let out a deafening scream that shook the reactor room. Then it attacked. Tendrils shot toward the humans from every direction. "Take cover!" Captain Ryn shouted. Pulse rifles filled the chamber with blue flashes, but the organism barely slowed. It smashed through metal railings and wrapped around 2 security drones, crushing them into twisted scrap. The monster stepped forward. It answered with a roar of its own. The 2 giants collided with enough force to shake the station. Claws tore through black flesh. Razor-like tendrils slashed across silver scales. The battle looked less like 2 animals fighting and more like 2 ancient enemies meeting again after centuries. Ethan watched the medical scanner clipped to his belt. The monster's vital signs were dropping every second. It can't keep this up. Suddenly, one of the parasite's tendrils slipped past the monster's defense and shot toward Captain Ryn. There wasn't enough time to dodge. The monster saw it. Without hesitation, it threw itself between the captain and the attack. The tendril pierced deep into its side. Captain Ryn froze. The creature had just saved his life. "Why?" he whispered. The monster collapsed to one knee. The parasite pulled back, preparing for the final strike. Ethan's scanner suddenly beeped. He stared at the poisoned blood sample. Then realization hit him. The poison. Professor Celis looked over. "What about it?" "It's not just poison." He held up the scanner. "The monster's immune system has been fighting this thing for years. Its blood is creating antibodies." Her eyes widened. "You mean? We don't need to kill the parasite with weapons. We can weaken it." Ethan filled the largest injector in his medical kit with the monster's freshly drawn blood. "But I need to get close." Captain Ryn looked at the raging battle. "I'll make sure you do." For the first time since the escape began, the captain didn't see a monster. He saw a wounded guardian, fighting to protect strangers who had imprisoned it. Ryn raised his rifle. "All units." The remaining soldiers answered. "Cover the doctor." As the monster struggled to hold the parasite back, Ethan sprinted straight toward the center of the battlefield, gripping the injector tightly. Everything now depended on whether a human medic could finish what the monster had started. Ethan ran faster than he ever had in his life. Around him, the reactor chamber shook as alarms blared without pause. Structural collapse. 5 minutes. The monster was barely standing. Its silver scales were cracked. Deep wounds covered its body, and every breath sounded heavier than the last. Still, it refused to fall. It held the black organism back with everything it had left. Captain Ryn and the remaining soldiers fired non-stop, forcing the parasite to divide its attention. "Ethan!" Ryn shouted. "Now!" The monster saw the human medic approaching. For one brief moment, it stepped aside. It trusted him completely. Ethan drove the massive injector deep into the parasite's shifting body and emptied every drop of the monster's blood. Nothing happened. Then, the creature froze. Black veins spread through its body. The living mass began twisting violently, as if fighting itself. High-pitched screams echoed across the reactor chamber. Professor Celis stared at the scanner. "The antibodies are attacking it." The parasite lashed out wildly, smashing equipment and tearing apart the floor. Chunks of metal rained from above. The reactor became unstable. A computerized voice echoed through the station. "Critical reactor overload. Automatic shutdown unavailable." Captain Ryn looked at the control panel. "If the reactor explodes, none of us are leaving." Before anyone could react, the monster slowly stood. It looked at Ethan one last time. There was no fear in its glowing blue eyes. Only gratitude. Then it turned toward the reactor core. "No!" Ethan shouted. The giant creature charged. With a final burst of strength, it wrapped both arms around the weakened parasite and carried it straight into the reactor's magnetic containment field. The blue energy erupted like a newborn star. The parasite screamed one final time before dissolving into nothing. The monster disappeared inside the blinding light. "Ethan!" Captain Ryn yelled. The human medic refused to leave. He watched the reactor until the light slowly faded. Then, A massive claw reached out of the glowing energy field. The monster stumbled forward and collapsed onto the platform. It was alive. Barely. Ethan rushed to its side. "You stubborn giant," he whispered with a relieved smile. The monster opened its eyes. For the first time since anyone had seen it, it made a soft, peaceful sound. Not a roar. Not a growl. Almost a thank you. 3 months later, the station looked completely different. The destroyed laboratories had been rebuilt. Containment cells had become observation habitats. No longer designed as prisons. Designed for understanding. Subject 07 no longer had a number. After learning that its species called themselves the Varesh, the station addressed the giant simply as Guardian. The first official report was signed by Captain Ryn. It contained one sentence that changed interstellar policy forever. Fear made us build a cage. Compassion showed us who truly needed saving. Dr. Ethan Carter became the first human chosen to work alongside the Varesh. Together, they developed treatments for the parasite that had haunted entire worlds, saving countless lives across known space. Whenever Ethan entered the habitat, the enormous Guardian always greeted him the same way, by gently lowering its head. The gesture that had begun as a desperate plea for help had become a symbol of trust between two species. It reminded everyone on the station that strength could earn respect, but kindness could earn something far greater: friendship. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe,